Hello, my name's Jack. I'm a guitar player and a guitar teacher, and I've been doing those two things for a living for the last 8 or 9 years now. And this is my channel. Until now here, I've just been chucking up bits of gig footage so that if I try and get some depth work or something outside of my regular stuff, I have something to point people in the direction of so they can see that I'm not bad, hopefully. But I wanted to start doing some proper videos, and I wanted to do a few specifically about problems that I've come across teaching certain things to students, and just shed some light on things that I've discovered through experience that have helped. And so hopefully it's useful to any guitar teachers out there, or anybody who's learning to play guitar, especially by themselves, and maybe are kind of stuck with certain things. This video is going to be all about chord changes, so either teaching people or learning to play chords and change between the various shapes and have things sound on time and like nice and fluid, and to maintain a rhythm with this hand as well. So I'm just talking about something really, really simple. You could have a simple rhythm with the right hand and just like a few chords. Yeah, it could be anything like that. Just I'm talking about sort of fairly beginner stuff. But this is something that I'd say every single person that I've ever taught guitar to struggles with at some point, and I've seen it cause a lot of stress, a lot of frustration, a lot of disappointment, and I found it can really kill people's motivation because it sort of feels very slow. Now, at the beginning of my guitar teaching kind of career, if you can call it that, I had very little to offer students. I really found it difficult to offer any sort of specific kind of palpable advice other than to say, look, you just need to go and do this every day for 3 or 4 months more and then come back to me if you still haven't got it yet. Do you know what I mean? So it was like, I think that's not necessarily what people want to hear, although there is quite a large chunk of truth in it, which I'll get onto again in a minute. But also I think in the role as a teacher, sort of people are looking to you to give them those little hints and tips and tricks and stuff like that. So I think it can really boost people's kind of morale if you're able to point them, give them a couple of little nuggets that just help them get that little bit quicker in a short space of time, and that is possible. So this is just my sort of, 4 or 5 things that I've found just generally have kind of helped people get a bit of quicker progress, like with changing chords and making them sound good and stuff like that. The first thing I want to talk about is just a very general thing that can apply to anything with guitar or anything else, to be fair. Which is there's no substitute at all for just the pure time spent on the instrument. So sitting with the guitar in your hands regularly every day, at least every other day. I mean, sometimes that's not even enough, but if if you're teaching students, you need to tell them this, and if you're learning, you need to understand that and people don't actually realize this. At the beginning I was quite nervous to tell people this because I thought it would put people off, but I think it's now I make a point of it right at the beginning. If I have somebody new, by the way, you need to realize that you need to sit down every day with this thing, otherwise I'm not going to be able to help you, kind of thing. And so that's the absolute fundamental base level requirement before any of the other kind of like, oh, this little tip and this little bit of advice will actually help, because otherwise you could fight a completely losing battle. So that's really important. The second thing is, I think, another general thing, which is kind of a mindset thing. And I found this like more and more, I'm quite interested in this sort of psychology of people when they're learning an instrument, but I think you absolutely have to be prepared to embrace not being very good. And this is something that you'll hear, it's not, I'm certainly not the first person to say this, but I think the Americans call it embrace the suck, which sounds horrible, but you know what I mean. But yeah, to be content and to make peace with, and to kind of almost in a kind of weird way, kind of enjoy the part of the process where you're not very good. Because if you can't push through that, then obviously no, you're never going to get to the other side. So, again, this is something I was a little bit nervous about saying to people, being upfront with early on when I was doing this, because I just didn't want to scare people off. But it's much better to say to people, look, you need to sit at home and be bad at this a lot, before you're going to get any good, and that's okay. We're not nobody's judging anybody. You know, just try and get that mindset in that place, because it's really important. There's a giant spider over there in the corner. So I think those two things are sort of fundamental. I think if they're not present, then nothing else is really going to help. But provided those two things are all good. So there are, I think, 3. Did I count them? I haven't really kept track. So more specific kind of things. The first thing is relaxation. When you watch somebody who's fairly new at guitar and you've shown them a few chords and they're trying to swap between them, you'll see it's very obvious when you look at their fingers, there's all sorts of excess tension in fingers, wrists, hand, arm, it can be the whole body thing. I mean, I don't know how many times I've recorded myself, watched myself back and realised I'm doing that, you know, and it's something I've tried to work on for a long time. It's just a human body reaction that we all have to something that's a bit uncomfortable. We sort of start tensing up. So it's really important that you encourage people to just shed as much of that tension and really try and relax their whole body, but especially obviously their arms and their hand and their fingers. Now, this is how I kind of tend to go about this in a lesson. So like I'll say, okay, so when you're holding down a chord, there is obviously some amount of tension required because we need to push the strings down. We need to be right on the tips of our fingers. So, you know, you're kind of doing this. Just make the chord shape and kind of like push down it so it works, but then try and make that as minimal as possible tension-wise in your hand. Just try and really feel like everything relaxing apart from just the most important bits that are making this work. And then when it comes to the chord change, the actual swap, say it's C to G or something, what I'll often do is just tell people to hold their hand out in front of them and let it just go limp like this and just sort of really try and relax the hand. And then then bring it to the guitar and then slowly put the shape on and then just practice without actually pushing on anything, just with a really loose hand, just touching the strings to just go between the two shapes. And what I try to make people see with this is just how quickly you can get your fingers from one position into another when there's actually next to no tension in your fingers, right? You can kind of put them in whatever shape you want. So I do this and then we'll say, right, you know, slow strumming, and we'll go through and C, 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 completely relax, move and strum on time. That's another important thing, strumming on time, even if your chord's not going to be there. But you'll see, most of the time you'll see straight away if people are doing this, they're doing kind of all the fingers at the same time. The hand morphs into the different shapes because the tendons and everything's just more free to do it. You know, this classic thing of, say we go to a C chord and it's 1, 2, 3, that's all because of tension. Your first finger goes back here and these ones follow it up there. If you relax a lot more, I mean, it doesn't happen straight away. It's something you've got to work on. But if you work on just not tensing your hand up when you change, you release the chord, really relax. This finger doesn't have to shoot up there and follow this finger like that. It can come across. So it's just encouraging the relaxation, and I think that's a big one, just for all aspects of guitar, but especially for chords. The second one of these more specific nuggets is to do with the rhythm hand, and I'd sort of alluded to it on the last one. Strumming on time, no matter what happens. So and anybody who's taught anybody guitar or anybody who's learning and has kind of been keeping an eye on what's going on, you'll know this thing where, again, let's take G to C. So we've got 4 strums of G going to a C. So you do your 4 strums, 3, 4. This takes a bit too long to get to its position and this just pauses, waits for it, and then we go again. And then sort of people complain, oh, I've got this big gap. You know, I'm not very fast going from this chord to this chord. So what's happening there is, obviously, this hand is waiting for this hand. And what needs to happen is you need to reverse that scenario. So this hand is your timekeeper. I say to people, this is like your metronome, your pendulum. It's not going to stop. And it's going to go down on beat 1 of that next bar, on that next strum, whether you're there or not with this hand. And and this is where that thing of embracing things going wrong is like quite important, because you need to be wrong. You need to get it wrong. You need to miss it to kind of start getting it right. Because what will happen, and I've seen this, is this hand changing the shapes, that will start learning to catch up with this hand. You're teaching this hand that it can't hang about. So you see this? Now that's not ideal because only one finger of the C chord was on, but I strummed on time. And then the next time you do it, you know, you'll probably have it just hurries this hand along a little bit. But it's that combined with the relaxation, combined with being okay for everything to go bad, those things start to make a difference. So that's the second thing I would say is this has got to become your timekeeper. You've got to get that separation and you've got to just force this to just keep going. Take your mind off it. It's always going to be on time. Focus on what this is doing and just let that be autonomous and just always be on the beat. And then the third thing, which is, I don't know, it probably makes the least difference in a way, I guess. But I mean, I think I force everybody to do this, even if they're really uncomfortable with it, because they soon get used to it. It's playing along with stuff. And it's something that, again, like if there's teachers watching this, or you've taught anybody and you've tried to get them to play with a backing track or play along with a song, people avoid that. Because again, it's something that it's an added level of pressure on, you know, so that, you know, not only have I got to now try and play along with something I haven't quite got the hang of yet, but I've then got to play along with some sort of recording or a song or something. Now, if people clearly aren't going to be able to do it, I don't do it because obviously if it's not achievable within some reasonable time period, then you're just kind of setting that person up to have a bad experience. So that's one thing. But when somebody is sort of like just sort of getting the hang of it, they're doing all the things I've talked about, and it's sort of just starting to happen, but it's still a little bit clumsy. What I'll do is I've got a bunch of different recordings of different sort of chord progressions and stuff like that, and which I'll give to them. So it might be, you know, different speeds, where, you know, I might be counting along as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, you know, all that kind of thing. And this, I mean, obviously, it gives them some reference to whether they're on time or not, because, you know, again, something that takes a while the skill that takes a while to build up with a lot of people is the sense of rhythm and the pulse and all that kind of thing. So giving people something to play along with. If it's a simple song, maybe getting the song, quite often I'll get the song, I might slow it down by 10% and then strum over the top of it so the guitar is really, really obvious so they can hear it and play along. This is just personally for me, I don't use metronomes with people a lot. I do if there's certain things, but for, you know, near the beginning, I tend to prefer to give people just recordings of me playing something or a song or some kind of thing like that, where it's got some guitar in it and they can feel like they're playing along. I think I found the majority of people do actually struggle playing with a click, whereas if they've got some chords strumming they can hear, somehow it's a little bit easier for them. So yeah, sort of gradually forcing people to always play along with something most of the time. Even young people, you know, students who are, I don't know, like sort of 10, 11, 12, I'll be giving their parents, emailing their parents things, saying, can you pass this on to, you know, because it's so easy for them to stick a bunch of WAV files on, or MP3s on the family's iPad or, you know, whatever it is. I think that makes a big difference. And actually, like, I know that plenty of people who I teach who a few years ago just flat out refused to play along with anything and would get really uncomfortable with it, you know, gradually over time, just keeping sort of nudging them. And now they're playing along with everything. And it's just become a habit, a thing that they do. And actually, they probably wouldn't want to sit and play on their own anymore. But going back to the thing, that the whole point of this about helping people with their chord changes early on, I think that once they're just starting to get the hang of it, just something to play along with, just to keep them in check, helps a lot. And I think it also makes things more interesting, and it sort of makes them feel like they're sort of, it's a way of actually seeing, like, I can play this, you know. So yeah, I think those are my things. But it's all, there are going to be loads of other things that people do to help students with stuff like that, but that was just my the stuff that I found help people just through my own experience. So yeah, I hope like somebody actually sees this video. If you do, let me know in the comments, because that'd be quite funny, because I've got no subscribers and hardly any views, and this, you know, it's just all been like grainy close-up footage of me playing mostly bass, bizarrely enough, at weddings. But anyway, I'll be doing some more of these. So if you do happen to see this and you want some more of this kind of stuff, I'll also be doing some gig-based stuff. I'll be doing some gear stuff and general waffle. So if that's your kind of thing, then maybe consider subscribing. But yeah, see you on the next one. Bye.